Welcome to the Versa Business Tips Podcast. I'm your host, founder, and CEO of Versa Business Systems, Shaheen Mazloom. And we are here with an awesome guest today, ex-MLB draft prospect turned entrepreneur, bringing the core principles of athletics to the business world by helping businesses save tremendous amounts of money on taxes. Who hates taxes? I know I do, man. It's out of control, man. So this guy's a legend. If you haven't seen the podcast, Consistency Wins. It's incredible. Antonio, how you doing today, bro?
Appreciate you, brother. I'm doing so good. I like to say if I was any better, it'd be illegal. That's how good I'm doing. And I mean, dude, that intro video was incredible, dude. I love it.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. I appreciate it. So for those out there that don't know who you are and what you do, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. Do you want the long version or the longer version?
Hey, man, longer's great.
Sure. So high level, currently 27 right now. So we'll bring it back to like my life of what it looked like before I was 22. And what that life looked like was literally baseball. That was like plan A, B, and C. Did nothing in my life besides play baseball. Didn't really care much about school. Got good grades, but that was kind of because I like manipulated my way through high school and college. And all I cared about was going pro in baseball. And with that was a realistic vision. And I was told that I was going to get drafted by a couple of major teams. And when that didn't happen, that was like the first time that I've ever hit some level of like massive adversity in my life, because I grew up in Long Island, New York, super upper middle class, where I like to say my only problem was that I had no problems. So I didn't understand how to deal with adversity. And that was like my rock bottom. I almost feel guilty about it because like,
I have a similar rock bottom story and I feel the same way. I'm like, man, that's really sad that was my rock bottom.
like I was never homeless. I never slept in my car, so like there's so many awesome stories, but I've learned to leverage that story because that's my superpower. Like I can't come from a standpoint of having been homeless or having been poor or broke. And that's, power to everyone that comes from there. But I can only use the story that I've had, and it's impactful nonetheless. And so with that, I quit on myself. Instead of like going the professional route, immediately quit, turned to drugs, alcohol, back to my ex-girlfriend, which is worse than drugs and alcohol, disclaimer. And that sparked probably like 6 to 8 months of like some serious depression. And once that happened, I did this like really weird, unique thing where I had this moment that I looked in the mirror. It was like the look in the mirror moment, I call it, but I was taking a video.
Same thing.
It's crazy how it works, right? And so like I took this video while I was driving, and I was basically just like almost to the point of cursing myself out, of just like, yo, what are you doing, man? Like you have so much potential. You can't stay
like
consistent.
This isn't you, man. Yeah. What are you doing?
Like you're such a leader, but you're just disappointing everyone, including yourself. And I consider that my knock on the universe my knock on the door to the universe or God, however, whatever your higher being is. And through that, I've now come to learn that that's like the science behind it is like I started to activate my reticular activating system to see more opportunities and all these different things. And through that, I got a sales job in financial services. So got my competitive edge back. I leaned into mentorship a little bit, leaned into reading books, and everything along that way, I started getting that wow factor of just like learning something new and like my mind being blown. And so once that happened, I started to compound that momentum a little bit. I started a podcast with my best friend at the time, and he's still my best friend today, Landon, who he's my co-host on the podcast that we've had you on. Yeah. And he was in the same business, but we were with different companies. So we were just having that podcast about like, hey, how does it feel to be self-employed or in the world of entrepreneurship at 22 years old and not know what the fuck to do with your life? Sorry if cursing. Am I good to curse on the podcast?
You're good, man.
Okay. And so we then soon realized like, who wants to listen to 22-year-olds talk about success when we have $500 to our name? So we started to then leverage other business owners to come on our podcast that were already successful in their respective industries. One, it was free mentorship because we couldn't afford it. So we started to like selfishly ask them questions. And two, we were then able to get super valuable, bring super value to them on the back end. So the way that we created that system was like, hey, let's just continue to do this podcast. Let's stay consistent around it. And we eventually started implementing enough things that they were telling us to get valuable enough to bring value to those humans. That started to compound a lot of energy, a lot of rejection came along the way, but you only need a couple relationships to change the trajectory of your life and your business, right? So 100%. Fast forward, a couple like 6 to 12 months, COVID happens during that time. And, selfishly, COVID poured fuel on the fire for us. That was like COVID took things to the moon.
Same, man.
And because we were already leveraging this virtual stuff, so like we were already on the platforms. We didn't have to make much of a pivot.
Yeah.
And so we landed a couple big joint ventures in that world. Quit our jobs, started an agency together, and got to a point where that these joint ventures were driving us traffic to the tune of 500, 1,000 leads a month, and really started to scale there. But then we soon got tired of having to sell a specific product to get paid. I hated the thought of having to stay biased when it comes down to it, because I love being unbiased. I love working with entrepreneurs, but I hate the fact that eventually it all comes down to how I make money, not how they can benefit. So we sold the firm. We ended up selling off the agency and starting a consulting firm that operates on a flat fee. We only work with entrepreneurs because we are entrepreneurs, so we want to help those entrepreneurs. Right. And we're working with entrepreneurs in the world of stage 2 growth. So past startup to where they're on the other side of going out of business every other day.
Right.
And they have some solid cash flow. And how can we use this as an opportunity to finally collect wealth? Because up until then, you're literally just fighting for your life every day, right? And you don't know if you're going to go broke. And so how do we make sure that this is the opportunity that we eventually like change our family's family and their families, Right. And so our entire vision is around helping entrepreneurs create maximum enterprise value. And we do that in 4 key areas where, one, we help them protect, because they're doing, we're talking about companies doing anywhere from like 3 to 100 million. So like they have enough assets to where, asset protection is a big thing, making sure that nothing can come claw back at them personally or on the business side. Tax strategy. It's like most people don't think through taxes because they just want to avoid the subject. If we're proactive about taxes, we can start leveraging the tax code to our favor. And ultimately, it's a hidden line item on our P&L because it doesn't show, right? We all talk about EBITDA. That's before interest and taxes. But net at the end of the day is what you're paying taxes on to yourself. If we can take 10 to 20% back into our pocket, we can grow our business pretty quickly that way, right? Organically being proactive around the tax conversation. Then we focus on how do we make the balance sheet in alignment with our vision? Because we only like to work with, like I said, growth-oriented entrepreneurs that are building real businesses. A lot of people come and get stuck in the point of just trying to make money and ultimately building themselves a prison or a job where it's like, great, that's great. It's better than working for the man, but ultimately you're working for your business and you're a slave to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So how can we make sure that every decision that we're making inside of the business has the long-term vision in mind so that ultimately we don't have to be there to continue to collect money? And then reverse engineering that through the proper exit strategies and making sure that if we're building a $100 million company, how do we actually extract $100 million from that company?
Right.
I'm going to take a breath now.
Yeah, dude. I mean, dude, that's amazing, man. Like, I kind of have a similar story, kind of hit that rock bottom. I was technically homeless, but I was living in my little brother's basement. So, I didn't have to sleep in my car. Yeah, man, it's crazy. When you see a lot of other entrepreneur stories and they were like true rock bottom, I had the same thing. I'm like, man, I feel guilty that was like what put me in that mass depression. And, you end up looking at yourself in the mirror and you're looking like, the guy, what is that Tom Hanks movie where he gets stuck on like a private island, what I mean? Like, what is it? Wilson, what I mean?
Yeah, no, I can't believe that I'm drawing a blank on it, but
you just get that time where you look yourself in the mirror, you're like, man, this is not who I am, this is not who I want to be, and you do something about it. I think a lot of the times people just decide not to do anything about it. Like they're like, I don't like who I am, but I'm going to choose to stay in this, this rut or whatever, and it's unfortunate, man, because there's so many talented people out there that the world will unfortunately never know. So good for you, man. I can imagine like your whole life, this is what you thought you were going to do. And then all of a sudden it doesn't happen. And now it's like, I mean, I don't care who you are. That's going to destroy anybody. But you built yourself out of that.
What it did was it destroyed my identity, but I realized that I just basically had the wrong identity. Right.
Yeah, you just had to recreate that goal.
That's the thing is like I thought that the goal was to play baseball, but the goal was to make a massive impact and touch so many lives. And baseball could have been the vehicle for that. But it doesn't have to ultimately be the goal, right? So baseball served its mega purpose, but then it led me to entrepreneurship, which ultimately has a massive higher return on impact. I think of ROI as like obviously return on investment, but then also return on impact.
Yeah.
And to your point of what you were saying earlier, that people, it's almost too daunting to even start. I like to say, nothing changes if nothing changes, right? And I think where, especially on the athlete side, on the high performance side, like a lot of us have that in there. If you're listening to this podcast, you have to be a high performer. And so the toughest thing is trying to hit the home run in baseball terms every single day, trying to hit the 1 year goal in one day. And that's where consistency wins comes in, where I finally woke up, because it's so discouraging, just like starting and stopping, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it was like the gym, right? Like I didn't work out after baseball ended, try to go back to the gym. You go crazy for one day, don't want to work out after a week because you're so sore. And so I was like, you know what? Let me finally commit to winning small every day. Let me go walk around the block one time and just commit to showing up every single day. That eventually compounded to walking around the block twice, then eventually going for a run, then starting to run triathlons, then, running a marathon this year, all these different types of things. You just got to get started, but, creating the habit of showing up and stay small in the beginning.
Right. I mean, if you just focus on getting 1% better each day, that's really what it's about. Like with me, every single morning I wake up, I write down 5 goals that I have. One will be for that day, one for that week, some long-term, whatever. And then 5 things I'm grateful for. And if I just focus on getting those things done and just be a little bit better than I was the day before, you can't not lose, right? Or you can't not win, right?
Logic, math, and science tells you that you're going to win. The emotions 100%. Are no longer present. So like to your point, I built out a system called Build. And this is where, like, if you're just getting started, I would start with Build.
Yeah.
Because this is an acronym. So B stands for body. So what am I doing for my body today? So writing down the night before, like, what am I going to do for my body the next day? Whether it's, go for a run, go to the gym, yoga, walk, something for your body. I think that all starts with it. Because, like, if you don't take care of your body, everything else is going to suffer.
100%.
U stands for you. Like, what is it that I wanted to do today? Did I want to go for a walk? Did I want to make sure that I watched a movie today, or whatever that looks like? Because ultimately, you're doing all this stuff to have the margin to do what you want to do. So put that into your calendar. I stands for income. What am I going to do today to drive my income forward? What are the KPIs that I need to hit? How many sales calls do I need to make? Go reverse engineering what those metrics look like from an activity level. Right. L stands for love. How am I creating new relationships? How am I nurturing the existing relationships? I dial it down to like the mega micro. 1 or 2 people a day, I just shoot them a text to my contacts list, how grateful I am. 0 expectation whatsoever in return, checking in on them. You do that, you almost have way too many conversations. Like I would start with 1 or 2, because you do that 5 times a day.
Right.
You end up having 90 conversations throughout the week. It's tough. And then D stands for development, or personal development. What am I reading? What am I consuming from a podcast, content perspective? Yeah. You knock out those 5 things and keep it super small. You look up in a year just doing that every day, like you're a changed person. So that's the system that I've created in the micro.
100%. I love that, man. And it's so true. Like my fiance, every now and then, like, I don't know, probably like a year ago, I'm like, I just don't have the time to work out. Like, I don't have the time. And she's like, dude, you can literally just do a 10-minute video workout. You can find 10 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to go to the gym for 2 hours. You don't have to, everybody wants to try to do all these things on like a grand scale every day. It's like, that's not realistic, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're super busy and you're growing a company or whatever. Like, if you just do a little bit each day, like, you're going to reach the goals that you want to reach, right? Like, all it really takes is 10 minutes a day to look good, feel good, be in shape, be healthy, right? You don't have to go to the gym for an hour. Granted, especially if you're lifting weights, you go to the gym for an hour, you're going to be pretty damn sore for a couple of days, right?
There's no such thing as unrealistic goals, only unrealistic expectations, right? And like, you can't get married to a specific expectation in fitness if you're building an 8-figure company. Like, there's got to be some give and take, right? So like,
100%.
Like, great, you can train, but like, if you're going to run in business and you're trying to go to the next level there, it's very unlikely that you're going to actually win the marathon. So you have to be okay with that. Like, that doesn't mean not to push yourself, but hold yourself accountable with empathy instead of self-loathing. That's the biggest thing that I've started to learn, is like, when I don't show up to max capacity, yes, I should be holding myself accountable as a high performer, but I should be doing it from a level of like, hey, yeah, that's good, man, and we'll be better, instead of saying, hey, like, what do you do? Like, really coming from this the self-loathing of like hating myself for
Right.
it. And ultimately that stops the momentum. And the only job you have is to keep the momentum rolling, because it's going to compound and you're going to be okay in the long run.
Oh yeah, 100%, man. So I want to talk a little bit about what you guys do as a company. So, you know, we do. I don't know if you've heard of PHI, the Preventative Health Initiative. We've done ERC. We did the PPP. You know, we do a lot of different things to help businesses grow and save money. Right, like the newest program we're focused on, PHI, helps businesses save a tremendous amount of money on their payroll taxes. And so we get people all the time like, man, that just sounds too good to be true. I don't have to pay for these benefits and I'm going to save money on my taxes. And our response is always like, I mean, yeah, okay, so I understand it sounds good, it's too good to be true, but Amazon making billions a year and getting a tax refund also sounds too good to be true, right? Like there's a reason why certain companies aren't paying taxes or they're getting a tax refund or whatever it may be. It's because they're taking advantage of every program out there that's available. So what I want you to tell us about a little bit today is, you know, and like you said earlier, people don't like talking about taxes for whatever reason, like, you know, and I love talking about it because I'm trying to learn everything I can to pay the least amount of taxes possible. Can you tell us about some of those too good to be true loopholes or programs that most businesses aren't taking advantage of?
Sure. So, I mean, to your point, the government incentivizes you to stimulate the economy, right? So like providing jobs for people, providing housing. That's why you always hear people talking about real estate or business ownership. They don't incentivize you to be an employee, right? Because that doesn't really stimulate much of economy. Granted, we need employees, right? But your W-2 is not going to save you from a tax perspective, nor is it the path to wealth, right? So, you know, when we're talking about some good to be true, I really think it comes down to not focusing on having to spend more money to go save money, right? Like you hear this concept, like don't go spend $1 to save 30 cents, right? So like, I don't think you should go just spend a bunch of money just to save money in taxes, because ultimately you're not going to net out on the positive side. I'd rather keep 70 cents on the dollar.
I like when people say that to me, they're like, well, it's a tax write-off. I'm like, but I'm still spending the money. What are you talking about?
It's a write-off. Great. It's a business expense, but like you also could have kept the money too.
Right.
So that's where I think like the first section that you should start is based on what you're already doing. Can I identify things such as credits that I can qualify for, depreciation opportunities that I qualify for, maximizing my deductions via like a section 162A type of code, where I like to tread lightly when I say the word creative, right? Because creative like ensues a gray area, not gray area, nothing gray area, black and white stuff, but making sure that you're maximizing every single dollar from a tax perspective, while also keeping your P&L pretty clean, so that if you want to sell the business, it still looks good, right? So not running all your expenses through the business. Yeah. So when we're talking about credits, you know, like ERC back when it was still live, I think it'll come back in some capacity. Yeah. So ERC credits, conservation easement credits. There's also ADA credits. There's energy credits, 45L, 179D, all these things that if you're building energy efficient things, that the government's going to incentivize you. Depreciation. If you own real estate, one of the best ways to start, you know, knocking off of your tax bill. A lot of people think it's too good to be true to not pay taxes, right? Donald Trump, whether you think lightly or don't about him, I don't care, right? Like the guy legally doesn't pay taxes. The fact that he hadn't paid taxes is like, he's a smart businessman in that sense. Like if he did pay taxes, then he's probably not like that good of a business guy owning that much real estate, right? Exactly. So utilizing things like a cost segregation study or like a PHI, if you have the employees to do it, why don't we maximize every single thing the IRS incentivizes us to do? Exactly. The IRS tax code is over 3,000 pages long. 95% of it is designed to help you save money in taxes, not spend more money in taxes. So let's start leveraging
3,000 pages.
If I'm not mistaken, don't
probably around there. Still, I didn't think it was that big. That's wild.
And a very large majority of it is designed to
help
to maximize your tax savings. Right. So why don't we start taking advantage of that stuff? Right. That's really
it's there to be used.
100%. So like if you want like a creative example that sounds too good to be true, but here's a real life example that works. And this is not something that I'm soliciting that you should go do, but if this is your world, right? So for example, I have a lawyer client. Guy makes probably like $5 million a year, net, crushes it, absolutely crushing it. He loves his boat, loves fishing.
Right.
Very tough to justify writing off his $5 million yacht / like fishing hybrid boat through his law firm. Right. Like he could, but the IRS, if they come knocking, it's it's not really a good ordeal.
Right. Start a charter company.
What we did was we started a lifestyle brand all around fishing that has its own P&L. It has its own insurances. They sell product. They're trying to make money. And then we wrote, the boat existed through that one. That all of that depreciation could go against his active income through his law firm. Now he didn't spend more money. He already bought the boat. So let's just strategically make sure that we're doing it. You have to have an incentive to actually make money, right? So the company needs to try to show a profit, but let's get creative and let's maximize that way without bringing up any red flags.
Right. Now is it true when so for example, a boat, if you have, say it's a boat that's essentially a massive billboard, right? You got your logo all over it. You got flags flying with business information and all that stuff. I mean, that could be a marketing write-off, no?
The entire boat, it would be a little aggressive.
Not the entire, right, but a portion of it.
The wrap, the business use per se. So let's say that you're, a very large percentage of the boat is used 30% of the time inside of your marketing and you can justify that, then I think where the aggressiveness comes from is like if you just have the boat and you write off 100% of it, then they might come knocking, right? So just being very on that side, if the numbers start to get larger, really meticulous when it comes to documenting. The IRS loves documenting. They're not out to get you. They're just looking for specific documentation. So if you could provide as much documentation as possible, if you're having clients on the boat, document them coming on the boat. Really list out your expenses and all that stuff just in case. Because they may never come knocking and then you paid all these taxes for no reason, right? But if you skipped out on your taxes for 10 years and then they do come knocking, you could be in serious trouble. So
100%, man. So, with there's a lot of people that are scared with the IRS expanding, right? I forget what the number is, but they're adding some crazy amount of new IRS agents. Like, what's your take on that whole thing? And how is that really going to change the way things go as far as taxes or amount of people getting audited and things like that? Or do you think there's not going to be a big change? What's the reasoning behind that, in your opinion?
Sure. I don't see there being too crazy of a change. Like if you're doing things by the book, all these strategies are black and white, right? The IRS knows of cost segregation. They know of credits. They know of PHI, right? As long as you're not, teetering in the gray area too much, then you're fine. Could we see an increase of audits with more agents? Yeah, maybe. It's crazy though that it just so happens that they end up going after the little guy. Most of the W-2 person that I don't even know how they go after him. It's crazy. But a lot of times when you get audited, it comes down to if your CPA has a book of business that gets audited a lot, if they're doing some sketchy stuff, they might audit the book of business and you might be caught in the crossfire. If you go from making very little amount of money to the next year just making insane amounts of money and then ultimately writing it all off, they might take a look. But in my experience, I think we portray the IRS to be these big bad people because I don't think anybody likes paying taxes. I fucking hate paying taxes, right? But they're pretty friendly people, man. They're willing to work with you. They're willing to go on payment plans. They're not your enemy. So understand that you are in partnership. Once you go into business, you are in partnership with the IRS. That just is what it is. Whether you like it or not, taxes exist. So let's make sure that we're staying inside of compliance. But I like to say aggressive inside of the scope of what they allow you to do.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, there's all these loopholes out there for a reason, right? So as far as this big growth of IRS agents, my take on it, and I might be wrong, but now more than ever, there's more entrepreneurs than ever in the history of the world, right? Everybody has some sort of side business or, they're doing Amazon FBA or they're doing drop shipping or they got a Shopify store, whatever it may be. I think there's just way more, even if it's just small, tiny businesses making a couple grand a month, right? There's more entrepreneurs and more businesses than ever before. So I think it's just a natural occurrence that they're short staffed. Because of all, you look at, for example, elementary school, right? When we were kids, you wanted to be a fireman. I mean, I wanted to be a businessman when I was 3 years old, right? But most kids wanted to be president or a fireman or policeman or teacher or whatever, right? Now the number one answer is YouTuber, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or Amazon dropshipper, or it's some type of entrepreneurial job that they, that's what they want to be when they grow up. And I think the world's just changed tremendously. And it's so much easier now to start a business and grow a business with all these different tools out there that, I mean, I think it's just a natural occurrence that the IRS would need to increase its employees.
Well said. The industry's growing. Why? I mean, the regulation has to grow behind it. And part of it's to protect you. Part of it, obviously, like we said, nobody likes paying taxes. It's annoying. But I think sometimes we fall into this fear mongering narrative of oh, they just hired 50,000 agents. They're all coming after you for your $600 right. Venmo. You're going to be okay.
Right.
Just make sure that you're aligning with the right professionals and don't think of everything as a write-off. You buy a watch for $100,000. I'm not going to be the guy to tell you to just immediately write it off inside of your business, Yeah. So it's really about your appetite for risk. And the IRS details a lot of stuff on their website. That's where I get a lot of my information from. I'm a nerd when it comes to this stuff. So I'll just go to the IRS website and look up all their stuff. They're very detailed in it.
Yeah.
Where they do go wrong sometimes though is they'll get relatively vague when they're introducing a new concept because they don't know how they want to go about regulating it. And then people try and find loopholes around that because it's vague and ambiguous. And then they close it the next couple of years and then they try and come after you for it after they didn't tell you the rules behind it. So right. I think it really comes down to don't try and do it yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm not a CPA. You need to leverage someone that all they do is study the tax code. Yes, their personalities are relatively dry, but they're all about understanding that. And then they're referring to court cases and things like that to interpret the law to make sure that you're not, at risk there.
Yeah. I mean, I always recommend to people so me personally, I have a bookkeeper because I want everything documented to the T, to the penny. And then I have somebody different that does my taxes. They don't know each other. They don't talk to each other. I want my tax guy to, kind of, see what they can do one way or the other, right? I want my bookkeeper to be down to the very penny. And I think a lot of the times they're oh yeah, I've got an accountant and they do it all. And I think, that sometimes that's, you're going to get one or the other. That's just my personal opinion, but
no, sorry, please finish.
I was going to say also having professionals like you guys, right? What, advisors, right? Would you guys consider yourself an advisor or what exactly?
Yeah. So we're more on the business advisory side, the consultants. So think about us as kind of the, you're the owner as the business owner. Yeah. You're the owner of the team. We're the head coach. We're getting the right players on the field to ultimately, win the game. So with that, we need an awesome CPA. We need an awesome bookkeeper to the next level, maybe getting a fractional CFO to help analyze those projections and all those numbers.
Right.
Then we need a great financial advisor. We need a great mortgage broker. We need a great lawyer. The problem that I come to see though, is that even as you're growing and scaling, these professionals are not all in alignment and they're not constantly on calls with each other. They're not communicating. And like you said, sometimes that's a benefit so that you can control the narrative. But there needs to be some type of centralization so that they're on the same page for your benefit.
Oh, yeah, with some things for sure. Yeah.
And that there's not conflicting opinions. You want to go buy a building. You don't want to continuously go back and be the liaison between these professionals. That's kind of where we come in and project manage all of that to make sure that everyone's on that same page. We have, wealth management solutions. We have payroll company. We have a benefits company. We do cost segregation. All those things are pretty vertically integrated. But we like to stay on the strategy side. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a CPA.
Right.
I never will be. So we're going to stay on the really high level strategy and ask the questions that the business owner might not be asking, because a contractor, a construction guy, he doesn't know shit, excuse my language, but he knows how to be really good inside of the space, right? He doesn't know anything when it comes to the money. So we are there on his behalf based on his vision that he articulated to make sure that they're making decisions for the benefit of himself.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So you were saying earlier there's a minimum revenue that you guys where do you guys, what space was it, 3 million to 100 million? Is kind of your area?
Yeah, I would say that's kind of where we're the most valuable. That's where people are starting to step into stage 2, where there's enough net income to,
Right.
really be valuable on the tax side. There's enough liability
And
to be
really
valuable on the asset protection.
Right. And to really need someone like you.
Yeah. And that's why I was like, as you're continuing to scale, I would say past 10 to 20K a month, you definitely want to align with the CPA.
Yeah.
Don't feel the need to get sold by a financial advisor, just like products, right? Keep the money liquid, but keep it performing. So like definitely consult an advisor to see how you can go about building out a proper balance sheet. Have some contracts, have some conversations with attorneys to make sure your contracts are bulletproof. If you have partners, your operating agreements and all those stuff. But then once the liability starts to get going, like what I've come to find is the most successful business owners understand they don't know it all, and so they outsource it to a level of expert.
Yes.
So that's where I call it.
That's the most important, man. Like there's so many business owners out there that like, because their business is successful or they're really good at what they do, they think they know everything about, and like those are the people that don't really make it to that. You will
never achieve
level.
enterprise value that way.
Never.
You cannot do it yourself to enterprise value.
No, you can't. Like you said earlier, and I say that all the time, like your guy that owns the mechanic shop, he knows how to fix cars. He doesn't know about lending. He doesn't know about tax strategy. He doesn't know about credit card processing or all these different things out there, right? All they know is they need them. And a lot of the times they don't take advantage of that, or they don't do the research, or they don't, nobody ever teaches them about these things. And so that's why there's people like you and me and all these other advisors and companies out there. But on the flip side of that, there's also companies out there that are giving them bad advice, bad information, stuff that can really be detrimental to a business. So I'm going to put in the description how people can get in contact with you if they're in that 3 million plus, if they're in that second stage, ready to really scale and get to eventually get the help that they need, so that they're not wasting their time. They're not spending more money on taxes that they need to, and they're really able to scale to that next level.
Yeah, man. Traditionally, like you hear the word family office thrown around, right? And like people think that you need to be worth 30, 40, 50 million to have a family office, right? And right. Most family offices, that's how it's structured. But when you're, starting to see significant revenue growth in your business and you want to scale, like I think about building out your fractional family office, right? Like you're starting to build out enough net worth to where you need all these people on the same page in order to get to that next level, because you can grow, but it's very tough to scale if you don't, right? There's a big like fine line difference between growth and scale. Growth is great, right? Like I love making more money, but if I can't scale properly through operations, through infrastructure, I'm not going to sustain that. Ultimately, no enterprise value. Ultimately, myself going back down and having to go like lose momentum is just like a drainer for me. So that's why we want to make sure that when we're parking dollars into something inside of our business, we have our active revenue generating dollars. Those are our growth dollars, marketing, sales, things that are going to go make us more money. And then we have our revenue supporting dollars, which are dollars that go right back to infrastructure, operations, automation, things like that. They're going to help us continue to increase while not, sacrificing the massive margins of the business at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah, I think people don't focus enough on the value of the business, and they're focusing too much on making money. Obviously, you've got to make money as a business, but people at some point, you got to start thinking about the exit strategy, right? Is your business a value right now? Would somebody buy your company the way it is right now? And does it hold significant value? Or if when you leave, the revenue stops and now you don't have a company that's worth $1. You've literally just worked for nothing for however many years. So you bring up some very great points, man. Great information. Dude, I got to ask you one more thing. So, obviously your podcast is all about consistency. Consistency wins every single time. You ask everybody on your podcast at the very end, what does consistency mean to you? So I'm going to ask you that question. Wow. What does consistency mean to you, man?
Wow. I appreciate you asking. So consistency to me means doing the hard things you said you were going to do, even when it gets hard, even when you don't want to do them, because you said you would do them. I have this formula that I write down every day. It's happiness equals self-confidence, which equals doing the hard shit that I said I was going to do. So all I need to do if I want to reach the quote unquote destination of happiness is to just follow through on my commitments, which is why I commit to the micro. Because if I commit to the long, daunting task, like I said earlier, there's no such thing as unrealistic goals, only unrealistic deadlines. I'm setting myself up for failure, and I want to play this game forever until I die. So I just find ways to win in the micro. What consistency wins means to me is taking that that large, daunting goal and dialing it down so small to the absolute micro of what I can do in this micro minute to be the most efficient, to have logic, math, and science tell me that I'm going to make it. So now I don't have to worry about my emotions, like inside of the space of doing it. My emotions matter. That's especially as men in a high performance culture, like we neglect our emotions and just hide it in work. There's still healing that needs to be done. Like you still need to process your emotions, but inside of the space of your actions, your standards need to be more important than your feelings, because ultimately you're going to fall to the lever of your standards. So one, build out a solid network of people that have high standards, hold them accountable, hold yourself accountable. I'm not the easiest to be friends with because of the high standard that I keep, but the only way you can do that is by holding it to yourself first. So holding yourself to the highest level of standards, and then ultimately that's going to transpire to people around you through your consistency.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. I couldn't agree more, man. One of my biggest pet peeves is people that say they're going to do something and don't do it, right? Like, it blows my mind. Like, if you say you're going to do something, why are you, like, just do it, right? The things that give you the most rewards are the hardest things, period, right? You say you're going to do something, do it, and you're like, that's how I've always operated, right? Like, even if it's something I don't want to do, like driving to New York to help my sister move a couch. A month later, oh man, I told her I was going to do that tomorrow. I'm going to go do it, right? There's nothing in my life that I've said I'm going to do and haven't done. And I don't think there ever will be. And, people ask me all the time, they're like, well, how are you doing this? How are you seeing so much success? How are you growing? I just do what I say I'm going to do.
Just keep your commitments.
And I work towards those goals every single day, right? It's really that simple.
Your reputation is really all that matters at the end of the day. But more importantly, your reputation with yourself, right? So keeping 100%. Those commitments.
Only you know who you really are.
And at the end of the day,
are you living up to what you want to be?
So well said, because your word is all you have. So the second that you don't follow through on a commitment, then I'm like, I can't take Shaheen at face value. Right. But if you're somebody who's by their word,
seriously anymore.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, if you're someone that always keeps your commitments, then you tell me that I have your word. I'm like, oh, dude, I know Shaheen's going to get it done.
I know I can take that to the bank.
It's sad though that I used to think that was the permission to play inside of business, that everyone just kept their word and fulfilled on their business. But it's you are
unfortunately, it's far.
It's crazy. You stand out from the competition just by doing what you're going to say. So that's 100%. You're already in the top 10% of if you just follow through on your commitment to your clients.
Exactly, bro. Dude, people ask me all the time. So we've been in business for 6 years and we have never had a single complaint from a client.
That's incredible.
Never a single bad review from a client ever in 6 years. In business to business, it's unheard of. So we tell people that and they're like, there's no way. I'm like, dude, you find a bad review from a client online, I will pay you $100,000. It doesn't exist because we do what we say we're going to do every single time. We don't BS people. We educate them. We help them. We don't have to hard close anybody. We just provide them with enough information to make an educated decision. So there's never any buyer's remorse. There's never any, they said they would do this and they didn't. There's none of that. That's where the bad reviews come from, because they didn't understand. They got hard closed. They didn't really know what they were signing, or you didn't do what you said you were going to do, right? There's this big notion of you can't please everybody. Versa Business Systems is proof that you can.
I love it.
You just got to do what you say you're going to do.
Well said.
Consistently.
Bang. I love it. Dude, appreciate you having me on, brother.
Dude, absolutely, man. Always a pleasure talking to you. I can't wait to discuss a little bit further. And dude, I'm looking forward to working with you, man. When I get to that 100 million level, dude, you're gonna have to help me
Let's
out.
Let's go. We're here.
I appreciate you, brother. You enjoy the rest of your day, man.
You too.